What is circumstantial evidence, and how does it affect an alibi? Imagine trying to solve a puzzle with some pieces missing or unclear. That's what working with circumstantial evidence can feel like in a criminal case. It's not direct proof like an eyewitness seeing a crime happen. Instead, it's indirect clues that suggest something might be true. For example, finding a defendant's fingerprints at a crime scene is direct evidence. But if the only evidence is that they were seen near the scene later, that's circumstantial. It requires connecting dots and making logical inferences. In criminal defense, circumstantial evidence can be a double-edged sword. It can be used to support the idea that the defendant is guilty, or it can be used to challenge an alibi. An alibi is a defense where the accused claims they were somewhere else when the crime took place. If the prosecution's circumstantial evidence suggests the defendant had the opportunity or was acting suspiciously after the crime, it can weaken the alibi. For example, if the defendant is seen leaving the scene or has a motive, that can cast doubt on their claim of being elsewhere. On the other hand, circumstantial evidence can also bolster an alibi if it shows the defendant was engaged in activities away from the crime. Witnesses who saw the defendant at a different location, or physical evidence like receipts or surveillance footage, can support the alibi. The key is whether the evidence creates a reasonable doubt about guilt. If the only inferences point to guilt, the jury might find the evidence insufficient. But if the circumstantial evidence can be interpreted in multiple ways, the alibi might stand strong. Because circumstantial evidence depends on reasoning, it's important for the defense to challenge its interpretation. They might argue that the evidence is weak or that there are alternative explanations. For example, if the prosecution claims the defendant had the means to commit the crime, the defense can point out that the evidence doesn't prove they did it. They can also introduce their own evidence, like witnesses who saw the defendant elsewhere, to support the alibi. Ultimately, the impact of circumstantial evidence on an alibi hinges on how convincingly it can be connected to the crime. The judge or jury will decide if the inferences drawn from the evidence are strong enough to override the defendant's claim of innocence. The goal for the defense is to show that the circumstantial evidence does not conclusively prove guilt and that the alibi remains a reasonable explanation. When the evidence is ambiguous or open to interpretation, it can create enough doubt to prevent a conviction. That's why carefully analyzing and challenging circumstantial evidence is a vital part of building a solid defense.